Welcome to the Community Spotlight with Think Tank. These conversations are for entrepreneurs to connect with each other, learn about each other, and be inspired by the unique wisdom that we all share. Each of our stories are different because we face different challenges, but that means that what you've learned along your journey is incredibly valuable to bring to this community so that we can all move one step farther. For those who are here live, please put your questions in the chat as we move along, and let's dive in with my next guest, Thomas Carlson, who is the Executive Director of ECatalyst and the founder of this community, the Think Tank. Welcome.
Thank you, Jenna Lee. I'm really excited to be here with you.
So give us a bit of a background on your entrepreneurial journey. I know it's you've done many different businesses, but I would love to hear a bit about that journey.
Sure, yeah, and I started in entrepreneurship after grad school, so this was back in the early 2000s. Started a business that was graphic design at the time, and then wound up moving overseas to the Middle East with my family. So we were just outside of Dubai in Oman, about an hour and a half outside of Dubai. Learned Arabic over there. I really love like the process of living overseas, and it's just sort of that process of trying to figure out how do you engage other people and the communication and all of that process. So, and then I started a couple more businesses while I was over there as well. So a lot of it was entrepreneurship in a cross-cultural context, which means that you've got to like do all of the innovation stuff. And I found that I really liked that. I really liked not just doing innovation, but like doing innovation with other people to really start thinking through stuff. So I was there for almost 10 years. When we came back, really wanted to get more into like development stuff overseas. And this is where entrepreneurship and sort of my heart to like help developing world countries started coming together, because a lot of development that's happening is all charity based, which in my mind can be really destructive sometimes. I mean, not that it's not well meaning, it can be extremely well meaning. But there's a book called When Helping Hurts by Fickert and Cobert, if you guys have ever read that book. They tell the story of two brothers in Rwanda that started an egg business, bought a couple of chickens, sold the eggs, bought a couple more chickens, eventually got a warehouse, employed some people. And then a very well-meaning, very loving church in Atlanta said, "Oh, these poor people in Rwanda, they don't have any protein. Let's send them eggs." And they flood the market with free eggs. Everybody is happy except for the brothers and their employees' families, and everybody that the employees wind up buying things from are unhappy. I mean, it winds up creating this cycle. And then a year later, the church said, "Oh, this has been so great. Let's go someplace else." And they
But
left
they've
the
destroyed the
community.
industry.
Right. They left the community with no eggs and no egg business. And so this is part of where I felt like we've got to break the cycle, because if that church had invested in the brothers and helped them build two more warehouses, that community would still have eggs. In fact, they could go nationwide if they got an investment. So this is part of where I felt like, man, if we could start really helping people start businesses over there, we could really develop this. Ran into a guy who was doing the MIT-based process, loved that. I felt like it was the kind of thing that I wish I had had back in those days when I was doing the graphic design business a long time ago. Just fantastic sort of synchronized process of doing innovation. And so tried to bring this to overseas as a nonprofit. And then about 8-10 months ago, we started pivoting and thinking, well, we're a nonprofit trying to help for-profits. What if we became a for-profit and really tried to help entrepreneurs in general, everywhere? Like take this methodology, break it into steps that people could really follow and do that. Started trying to do it on in person. That's really where I feel like innovation happens the best, is in person. But also have this online community that could connect the in-person groups around the country and around the world, but had a harder time filling up those in-person groups. So the thought back in August, and that's when all of this started, was, well, what if we took that online community and made that the primary thing that we're using to really serve entrepreneurs, help them create this innovation, connect with each other, make progress in their businesses, and then make that something that we could even take overseas and build a process, not just for entrepreneurs, but particularly for developing economies that could really grow cool businesses that have economic impact and genuinely help people. And so that was really the heart behind the think tank. And we have learned a ton since then. People like you and Shannon Meyer and Allison and others who have started doing the in-person groups here in Colorado Springs, and hopefully around the country we'll start doing. A guy named John Erickson, who's also in the group, is looking at really helping out as well. And it's getting exciting. So it's still in its very beginning stages. It still feels like a really kind of beginning process that could be very cool. But I'm hoping we start adding a lot more live events, and we've got a whole progression thing that I'm very excited to start rolling out. That's come
Yes.
all from feedback from you guys. So,
Because I'm excited too, because I've seen a bit of the back end of the new
uh-huh,
ideas. So I'm very excited. People come tomorrow for, I think Tom's going to talk more about that. But I
yeah.
want to hear a little bit more too about like when you originally started with in entrepreneurship, like what was your personal motivation? What drew you to that path? Because it's not easy.
It's not easy. And originally, part of it was when I was thinking about heading overseas, my thought was, well, I could try to get a job someplace. I just really wanted to live overseas, or I could start a business. And so I said, well, gosh, I've never started a business. Let me just try something. Landed on graphic design. It sort of worked. This was before Shutterfly and all the other, kind of automated systems. Um, but I just found I was really good at it. And not only was I good at it, I really liked it. I really liked that process of creation, and trying to help people design stuff. And then to be able to then take that in a way that helps other people, like you, Jen, I know you're working out of business. Other people are, it's, there's something about entrepreneurship that really brings out people's heart and their passion and their drive and who they are as a person. And when you can do that in a way that actually builds revenue, which means that people are actually buying, which means there's a need being met, there's just a value to that I just find exciting and thrilling. I just love working with people on it.
Yeah, really capturing that win-win-win.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think
exactly.
you're right.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the
So,
people, at least that are drawn to this community, I've noticed are entrepreneurs that are creating businesses from their own passion or because they really have a passion for a problem that needs to be solved. And so it's been really cool to connect with everybody in that spirit of creating businesses.
yeah.
So you mentioned too about, oh wait, I have one. Let me ask the question in the chat first.
Okay, sure. Go ahead.
Do you tend to be more drawn to the companies or the region? Are there any pros you found in prioritizing the people?
Wait, prioritizing the people, is that what you said?
Yes. So
Okay.
what is drawing you to maybe I think the question is like what's drawing you to like the international scope of
Oh, I
business
see
and
what you're
like
saying.
are you drawn to companies that you hear about or regions? Are you particularly interested in regions?
You know what? There's a lot of regions that I find really fast. I mean, obviously, I speak Arabic, so I love the Middle East. There's something about that whole region, and there's a real need for economic development there to happen as well. But I mean, I've worked in Ethiopia, and we're in Rwanda, we've worked in India a little bit, so it's not. I mean, I think entrepreneurship is kind of entrepreneurship no matter where you go. You have to figure out what the needs of the people are. You have to figure out how you're going to try to meet those needs. So it's not the contextualization really becomes part of the application. It's not the concepts behind it, which is part of the reason I feel like entrepreneurs from everywhere and from different sectors and different industries can learn from each other in ways that open up innovative possibilities that we're just not going to think of when we're stuck in our own little box, whether that's my own brain or whether that's my industry or people who are just like me. When we're stuck in those kind of spaces, we miss out on all these possibilities and innovations that can happen. So I'm really drawn. The reason the developing world is so important is because in the developing world, there's a lot of micro business, which is good. There's nothing wrong with micro business. And then there's a lot of really big businesses. The problem with micro business is it tends not to really impact the economy that much. It helps get people off of poverty, which is phenomenal. But the middle, we call it the missing middle,
Mhm.
oftentimes is missing in developing world context. And those are those smaller economically impacting businesses that are growing, that are developing, that in the US we have tons of them. But in the developing world, we have tons of them. In the developed world, we have tons of them. In the developing world, it just they don't tend to be there, which means there's no mobility. People don't have the chance to grow economically, and they don't have a chance to really empower their community to grow economically. So that's where I feel like if we can come in not from above and say, okay, all you, poor people, let's show you, and we're going to, give you the things you need to get, but come up from underneath that says, you guys have potential. There's talent here, there's intelligence here, there's creativity here. Let's give you the guidelines to help you figure out how to do the business, but then it's your business. You're the one building it. You're the one building something. That's what draws me to the developing world. It's not that, entrepreneurship is entrepreneurship, but there's a need for it in the developing world that there isn't as much in the developed world. Not that we don't all need to grow, but I think there's a bigger impact in the developing world sometimes too.
So since you like, that's such a powerful mission, like seeing the need, going in there, and now you're going to help with that missing middle. And it makes a lot of sense, like you're saying, that it would help to actually impact the economy in those places and make it like more widespread sustainable. So are there particular challenges, like what are particular challenges in that context that maybe you wouldn't find in the US, or are they similar?
I think they're similar in the sense that entrepreneurship is hard.
Yeah.
No matter where you go, entrepreneurship is hard. It's hard to keep going. It's hard to have the capacity to grow. I think one of the things that we've even found in the community is that entrepreneurs also come in with a wide variety of skills and skill sets, and a lot of us are at very, very different places. That doesn't mean we can't help each other. It's just trying to facilitate, and this is what we've been developing in the community, is how do we facilitate us helping each other in a way that people who are farther along can help people that are not farther along but can still benefit from that process.
Yeah.
So I think to answer your question, I think the other challenge that's over there is that they don't have nearly as many helps. I think this kind of community, in my thinking right now, is sort of unique. There's a lot of Slack channels that are out there and some other things, but none of them really have they don't have the kind of progress that I think we're trying to lay out here. And it's still not completely built in yet, but I really want to build it in. But over there, there's really not very much of anything. So when we can bring something like this that really works for American entrepreneurs to a place that doesn't have any other resources, I think we can really help them, develop something that would be really, really cool.
Yeah. Well, so maybe to pivot a little bit, since you have a lot of experience in entrepreneurial development, as
Sure.
well as your own entrepreneurship journey, what advice would you give someone who's starting their first business? If you had some general advice, that'd be really helpful.
Well, couple different things. One is entrepreneurship is not hard simply because of the finances or because of the build. It's hard because it's emotional. Entrepreneurship is much more of an emotional process than I think most people give it credit for. We feel like we're just doing a job. We're just now working for ourselves. When you work for yourself, everything in your life hangs on your success today. And so that just puts a lot of pressure on making today work. And without, and every failure feels like a much more catastrophic kind of thing, which means the ups and downs and the excitement and the depression and everything else just gets much steeper. So I think for entrepreneurs, be aware of that. Things are gonna hurt. It's gonna feel great at times. It's gonna feel terrible at times. That's why we need each other. I think that's why communities like this really benefit entrepreneurs, is we really need that capacity to connect with each other, and
Yeah.
recognize that, okay, I'm not alone in feeling like an imposter here. I'm not alone in feeling like, is anybody going to really like what it is that I'm bringing? Every entrepreneur feels that. No matter where you are in the process, there's always that moment where you're going to bed feeling like, oh man, this is just never going to work. And sometimes you just need a good night's sleep, wake up tomorrow morning, connect with a friend, and things are going to feel completely differently.
Yeah.
So I think that would be my biggest piece of advice. The other thing is just keep trying, and be ready to fail. Get out there, try something, see what happens. If it fails, great. That's a great thing. You've just learned a ton about what your business needs to do. Go out there, fail, try again, fail again. Just like be determined to fail well. I think that's part of what entrepreneurship is all got to be. Is
Yeah, and that takes the emotional fortitude as well
it
to be
does.
able
It
to
absolutely
fail
does.
well.
And it takes other people around you who can support you in the process. It really
Yes.
does.
And I love that you keep connecting it back to like the real value of this community, and I know we're all feeling that. So I really want to say I'm very grateful. So like speaking with the community here, very grateful for that you have created this space for all of us. Um, and so what if you want to share? I know we probably have a few minutes, but what's the some of the vision you've been touching on it thus far, but like of where the community is going, if you want to share a
So
little bit.
thanks for asking that. And not to talk too much about what the community is, but I do feel like the thing that I feel like I've really been learning over the last 6 or 7 weeks since people have come in sort of for the first time is that the main need, I thought the needs were going to be innovation. I thought people just really needed to bounce ideas off of each other and that was going to be the primary thing that people wanted out of the community. It hasn't been. It's not that people don't want that, but it feels like the main needs that people have. And I'm excited to learn this because I feel like now we can start meeting those needs, is connections with other people, like genuine connections, not just posting online. The posts are great, but I think more in-person events would really help, a chance to be able to bring things to the table and connect with people around things that you can really serve people with are huge. And so finding ways to make that available to people and then progress. And that's really the thing we want to roll out is how do we progress in a way to we can work towards pitching our business and ultimately even putting that in front of investors or in front of other people in a way that says this can be a community where we're practicing that process of getting out there, articulating our businesses, making progress in that, and then even possibly, and this is the hope, is that as we start getting some businesses ready to pitch, that we actually create a Shark Tank that can be a static thing that we can invite investors in who could start looking at those businesses, helping you refine your pitch, and then maybe even getting you an investment in the process.
Well, I'm very excited for all of that. And I also want to say I really appreciate your vulnerability in even you sharing that for you, this has been a learning journey. And I hear your excitement of like, hey, it wasn't exactly what I thought. It was this other thing. And so I'm going this way. And so that's a perfect example of what you just said earlier about having that emotional fortitude that like your first idea might not be the thing that's we're at time. We're at time. So
It's okay. All right. We got a
that
couple minutes
that is the
buffer.
thing,
Yeah.
but like that's a perfect example of, and probably a really great example too of how to approach when things need to pivot. So I just wanted to highlight that as well. Thank you so much for being here, Tom.
Very welcome, Natalie. Yeah, I think that process of just learning, again, this is what makes failure so amazing. Is failure teaches you things. And as an entrepreneur, I guess this would be my last piece of advice, and maybe we can just close with, is your main job as a starting entrepreneur is to learn. It's not to succeed, it's not to build revenue, it's to learn, figure things out. That's your main job. There will be the time where you start bringing it out and you start making revenue, you can start doing other things. But right now, at the beginning, learning is everything. So
Wonderful.